Hi, everyone. We're just about a minute away. Thank you for joining. I see I have about 82 people already, so I'm overwhelmingly surprised. Hi from Saudi Arabia. Hi. It's probably tomorrow there. Oh, you say you can't hear. Can you hear me now? If you can let me know if you can hear me now, I would appreciate it. This is my first time doing this, so I want to make sure. Wonderful. So there's a little bit of a delay that I see, but maybe it'll catch up in a minute. But I see DC is on. Um, who else? Where are you guys coming from? So there's definitely a delay, but that's okay. I see New York there. Hey, Jennifer. Hey, Janet. Lori, Maria, Lawana. We've got Georgia, we've got Houston, we've got the Bahamas, we've got Pennsylvania, Atlanta. And of course, I see my NYP people here: Tampa, Saudi Arabia, Houston, Arizona, Augusta. Brooklyn's in the house. Of course, I'm in the Bronx, so Cleveland, I see you. Hey, Jennifer in Brooklyn. Alicia from Georgia. Monica from Georgia. Toronto. Detroit. Huntsville, Alabama, near my hometown, and Montgomery, Alabama, North Carolina. So Washington State. So thank you all for joining. It's 7:01, so we will go ahead and get started. And thank you so much. I'm so overwhelmed. 84 people now, 87 people. This is my first LinkedIn Live episode. And we're going to talk about work. I'm going to name this series, and join me here every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But this name of this series is Let's Talk About Work. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Natasha Bowman, also known as the Workplace Doctor. And I am an everything work. My purpose and my passion is to create engaging and positive workplaces through cultural transformation. I'm a labor and employment law attorney, but I left the legal field years ago to go on the other side to human resources. I got tired of being reactive and really wanted to be proactive in cultural transformation. And that's what I've been doing, either as a HR executive or through my consulting firm, Performance Renew. If you haven't picked up my book yet, I have a book out. You Can't Do That at Work. So I'm everything work. And I guess you can say I'm kind of married to work. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight in this first episode is married to work. Prince Harry's and Meghan Markle's, or the Duchess and Dutch of Sussex exit from the royal family. Related to work. You may be saying, Natasha, that's political or that's a family issue. But let's dig a little deeper into that. But before we do, let me just see who all is in. Hi, Yvonne. Hi, Sharonda. Hi, Israel. Hi, Latina. Oh, you have a leadership book club. Please recommend a copy of my book. If you're in the United States, it's United States based. Thank you, Janet. Louisville, hi. I got to visit you last year for an event. So hi, I'll check it back in just a moment. But let's dig into this exit of Prince Harry and Meghan from the royal family. So, if you were like me a few years ago, I'm here in New York and I woke up like at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to catch the wedding of Meghan and Prince Harry. Had followed Meghan for a while in her acting career. And if you were like me, you were, oh, wow, she gets to be a princess. That's something that sometimes little girls dream of when they're younger. And she was living out this fairy tale. But I guess it's more to that than what we know. There's a responsibility that came with that that went beyond her marital responsibilities. You know, she was literally married to work. And ultimately, as we all know, she announced along with Prince Harry that they would be exiting those responsibilities or scaling back from those responsibilities. Now, there are a lot of rumors and innuendos as to why that happened and why that occurred. But the one thing that I do know, and they have not really confirmed the why, they've just told us the what. But what I do know, outside of rumors and innuendos and things like that, what we do know is that people do not leave places that they feel valued, that they feel respect, and they feel a sense of belonging. And so that brings us into our first episode and how this relates to work. Because ultimately, she was at work 24 hours a day in her responsibilities and in her marriage. But we all want that sense of inclusion. We all want that sense of belonging. And it had been word out there for a while that perhaps she wasn't feeling the acceptance that she wanted to feel. How many of you have ever in your workplace felt that way, where you've been dreaming of this dream job that you worked maybe your whole life? You went to school, you got a degree, you got certifications, and finally that dream brand, that dream job knocks on your door. But when you get there, it's not everything that you hoped that it would be. In fact, perhaps it wasn't a dream at all. Have any of you been in that situation? I know that I have. So yes, let me know in the comments if you have. And I'm hearing the connection's not that good, but somebody, Siobhan says several times. Yes, several times, unfortunately. Anybody else have felt that way in their jobs? Somebody says facts. Yes, facts. Been there. Yes, you can attest to that, Raquel, Alicia. Sonia says, oh, yes, I've been there, done that. Everybody's saying yes. Not one person is saying, nope. I've always been in jobs where I feel fully accepted or a sense of belonging. Again, I have felt that same way, and that's really what has inspired my work. If you watch my TED Talk, I tell a story about when I was working at a law firm, and someone confused me for the only other African American woman that worked there. And that was after I had worked there for 3 years and she had worked there for 5 years. So at that point, right, you start to feel like an imposter. You start to suffer from imposter syndrome. It messes with your psychological safety when you feel that way. So one of the first things we're going to talk about as we're talking about Prince Harry and Meghan, and we've already kind of touched on it, is inclusion and belonging. So as we all know, you've probably heard the saying of what's the difference between diversity, inclusion, and belonging, especially when it comes to the workplace, right? So diversity is being, asked to the party. You probably have already heard this. Inclusion is someone being asked to dance, and belonging is when the DJ plays your song. So she was welcomed into this family and into this new responsibility. But, however, just because you're invited somewhere, does that really mean that you are welcomed? Does that really mean that you're going to be in sync with everyone that works there? Is it going to fit in with your lifestyle, right? And with your goals and ambitions? And as it was announced today, she actually signed a deal with Disney, where she's going to do some voiceover work. And what we knew about her was that her passion is acting. Sometimes we leave our passion and follow other things because we think the grass is on the other side. I've seen that happen so many times. Either we follow money or we follow a big title, right? Or we follow even sometimes a major brand, someone with a company that has big brand recognition. We go follow that yellow brick road thinking, I'm happy here, I'm doing my passion, but something's telling me it's better here. But the moment we leave our passion and our purpose and we start to pursue superficial things, sometimes that just doesn't work out the way that we plan to. So that's one of the main lessons to always pursue your true passion and your true purpose, because it's very difficult to be happy at work if you're not doing exactly what you want to do. That is so crucial. And when I coach people, I have to tell them that all the time. Is this really your passion? Is this really your purpose? Right? How many of you have left? People are saying, I can attest to that. We followed the grass ring, but the brass ring, but it's not quite the thing we want, that we were truly pursuing or that really makes us happy. So somewhere down the line, as I said earlier, people don't leave places where they feel valued, where they feel a sense of belonging, where they feel a sense of inclusion. So while we don't really have the facts of why she left, we can't help but wonder and assume that having that lack of inclusion and belonging had something to perhaps do with it. The next thing that I want to talk about is money and titles don't mean a thing. And I kind of hinted on this earlier. You have probably heard somebody said, I had that experience today. I wish I could hear more about that, Latoya. You have probably heard the song, It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing, doo-wop, doo-wop, do Gallington. I'm a big jazz fan. But same as that song, right? It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. So again, sometimes we pursue money, we pursue titles, but again, we're not pursuing our passion and our purpose. There was a time in my career when I thought, if I could just get to that VP mark, or if I can just cross a certain salary figure, that this toxic work environment will just mysteriously disappear. Have any of you ever thought that, maybe the further that I go up the career ladder, the better I'll be treated? Look at some of your comments. And yes, you're right, Letitia. People don't leave companies, they leave managers. And then sometimes I'll counter that and say, well, maybe they are leaving the company because it's the company that kept that toxic manager around. So really, they are leaving both of it. I mean, I've seen on so many levels where companies have kept toxic managers around when they had an opportunity to, let that person go and chose not to. Yeah, someone says, yes, I left my passion to follow what I thought was the right path. That's the truth. I stood at a job, made $10,000 more than where I was making, but your boss and I can't read the rest of it. But yes, people are saying that that's happened to them. We stick around, we're thinking, oh, if I can just make more money, if I can go up the corporate ladder, if I can just have a big title, then I can call my own shots. And again, this toxic environment will disappear. That's not true. Just because you're at the top of a corporate ladder, or just because you're making a certain amount of money, those problems, that toxicity will continue to follow you. So you have to think about, what is it that you truly cherish? I've seen other people take, pay cuts, right? Just to be in an engaging and positive environment. So think about it. If you could double your income right now, that you had to work for a toxic manager who, messed with your psychological safety, didn't give you a sense of belonging and inclusion, and you were miserable every day. Or you could take a 10,000 pay cut and feel truly valued, feel like you were really contributing something to the organization, feeling like you're bigger than yourself. You're working on something bigger than yourself. There is no amount of money and there is no title that can ever replace that if you have that opportunity. And I tell you, I've been on both sides of that equation, and there's nothing that can replace your sense of value, your sense of, of belonging. No amount of money and no title. And I've been in the big titles where it has been in great companies, and that has been so rewarding. And that's really the pie in the sky, but sometimes it doesn't happen. But you really have to think about, like I said earlier, what's your purpose? What's your passion? Because that's ultimately what's going to bring you that feeling, that engagement that you want to have at work, right? And guess what? Once you have that sense, once you have that sense of belonging, that sense of inclusion, once you feel like you're contributing, you can be your authentic self at work, right? The money, the title, all of those superficial things will come. But you have to have that sense of security first. And what we've seen here with Meghan and Harry was that probably somehow she did not have that sense of security. So she had to leave, right, to follow. So just reading some of the things, do you run or be the change in those environments? I say first, you try to make the change. I say in my TED Talk, I say all the time, be the change you want to see. Other people have said that try to facilitate change yourself, but sometimes you have to get to the point where you have to say, this just is not the workplace for me. This is not the culture for me, right? Someone else says, it's your health. Absolutely. Most illnesses are attributed to stress. Most stress is work stress that you experience from the workplace. So whenever a toxic work environment is impacting your mental health, eventually is going to impact your physical health, right? And it's just not worth it. I've been there and done that. It's not worth it, right? Right. And so I see my good friend Shar here. Hey, Shar. She says P&P, purpose and passion equals happiness. I love that. Somebody says you need a boss that will treat you with dignity and respect at all times, right? Absolutely, you do. And someone says, yep, if leadership doesn't change, it won't change, and you will be seen kind of as that culprit, right? So, it's all about the management. It's all about you working with the company working with you. Employee engagement is a two-way street. It's not a one-sided relationship. Developing workplace culture isn't a one-sided relationship. It's not just on leadership. It's not just on employees. This is a relationship, a two-way relationship. And if one side is lacking in trust, if one side is lacking in a credibility, right, it does not work out. It has to be a relationship. So, it just brings me to another good point. Sometimes when we're working in toxic environments, sometimes we have to do a self-reflection. We're quick to say they, right? They did this, they did that, or they're not doing this, they're not doing that. But I always challenge, even myself, when I've been in these situations in the past, and when people call me up, I always say, let's do a self-reflection first. Let's understand your role in this environment, right? When you are faced with negativity from colleagues or boss, how are you handling that? Are you giving feedback? Are you trying to shape the behavior? Are you helping people to understand how their conduct impacts you, right? What's your sense of self-awareness? Are you contributing too much to the negativity and toxicity? Are you always coming to your organizational leaders with problems without solutions, right? Because every problem has a solution. And if you can't come up with a solution, it's probably not a problem, right? So I always say that when you're explaining these problems to your organizational leaders, are you giving them solutions, right? So doing some self-reflection. What am I doing so that I have a sense of belonging? Am I helping to create a negative environment? Can I be doing something more? And then sometimes once we do that self-reflection, we may realize it's not us. I've done everything I can do. So just checking in again. Oh, hey, Lucretia, one of the top career experts out there. If you don't follow her yet, follow her. Vincent, hi. He said one of the most important aspects of life is being born and dying, and you got to figure out the middle. I wish I could read the rest, but it doesn't let me. Hi guys, thank you so much for those of you that have joined. Treat others as you would want to be treated. That's right, Ronald, right? You've got to do self-reflection. And I always say, I even tell my daughter this in school, you know what? How about you just start changing the behaviors, changing the conversation? You lead. And I know you've heard this before, might have been Simon. I'm trying to think who said this first. It's not my original quote, right? But it's one of my favorite quotes. Leaders don't create followers. They create other leaders, right? So, I'm always saying, set the stage, raise the bar, show people what it's like to work in a respectful workplace, right? Set that expectation. You will be so amazed on how many people will follow your lead, and you, no matter your title in the organization, no matter how much money you make or how much status or whatever it is that you think you have to have, you would be so surprised on your own individual ability to change culture. But sometimes, right, just segueing into my final point, if I can find it, sometimes we just have to exit. So you've done everything you can possibly do, right? You've changed your behavior, you have self-awareness, you've done self-reflection, you've given constructive feedback to your peers, to your leaders. But sometimes you just have to get to that point where this is not the culture for me. This is not the workplace for me. And that's essentially what Meghan and Harry decided in this past week. And I'm sure they had done everything that they could possibly do to try to make things work out. This was a humongous decision that they knew would have, huge implications, not just there in the UK, but worldwide, right? We're talking about this all over the world. And they knew that. So they knew that it would have large implications. So I'm sure that they really, really thought about this and weighed all of their options. And there were a couple of things that I observed about their departure. One, they didn't let anybody know prior to making the announcement that they were leaving. Now, let's think about that in real context when you're in the workplace, right? So I have some people that come to me and say, hey, Natasha, I'm thinking I've got to go. This is not the workplace for me. Should I go and threaten my manager that I'm going to leave unless they shake things up? Should I, say, hey, I have another offer. Maybe they'll counter, they'll act right. And what do you think my response is? You're right. I say, don't do that, right? Because a lot of times, once you let your employer know you're looking, that's kind of it. A lot of times employers don't like that. And they'll say, oh, well, you can just go. Today can be your last day, right? So we don't want to do that. And we also don't want to catch our employer by surprise, right? By just saying, oh, today's the last day. Now, we don't know if they, caught the royals by surprise and maybe they were only surprised that the announcement was made. I'm not sure, but from I'm reading there, they were surprised that this exit was happening. I always say that just like if you were underperforming, you would expect your manager to come to you to say, hey, I need to give you some feedback. I need to tell you about the expectations, ways to improve. And you would expect that to be a continuing conversation. And you would expect them to give you feedback on improvement and how you're doing. I believe, again, that's a two-way street, and that you should be having that conversation with your employer. And you can have that conversation in a non-threatening way. You don't walk in there, I'm going to leave unless you do this. No, it's simply saying, hey, I took this job for a reason. Outline those reasons. What did you like about that organization when you were hired, when you were going through the interview process? Maybe there were some expectations that were made during the interview process that have not been met. Perhaps you can say, look, I was told I would receive development opportunities. I haven't received that yet. Or maybe you have to say, hey, you know what? I was told that this was a great culture and respectful culture, but here are some of my observations. And you have that conversation and say, hey, I really want to stay. I really want to be here. I really want to perform to the best of my ability. But in order for me to do that, I have to be in a positive, engaging workplace. So how can we work together? And I bet you there are some other people here that feel the same way. So how can we, change this culture? What can I do differently? Can I give you feedback? Having those, I like that, deliberate dialogue. Thank you, Ronald. I like that. Having a deliberate dialogue. And then look, you at that point, you've had the conversation. That's kind of your fair warning shot, if you will. But continue to have that conversation, but you may just come to the place where you have to exit. So as I wrap up, and I wanted to only do this for 30 minutes first time, but as I wrap up, I just want to leave you, if you come to that point, here are a couple of things. Number one, like I just said, I would not catch my employer off guard and just walk out on the job instantaneously. You don't want to do that. You want to have meaningful, purposeful dialogues and conversations about your experience there, right? I've met so many managers that they are literally blinded to what's really going on in the workplace, believe it or not. And sometimes when you bring it to their attention, they are willing and able to help to change the culture and the environment. If you start performing a job search, understand that you run the risk of being caught performing a job search. And some organizations don't respect that. And they'll say, hey, I know you're looking for another job, so today's your last day here. So be respectful in your job search. And there's ways that you can do it anonymously. With your interviewing, definitely do not, bash your former employer. That's a no-no, because you never know. Things may change there. You may boomerang back. Leave that door open, right? You always want to leave doors open. You never know what may happen. And then if you're asked, and this is most important point, if you were asked to give feedback about why you're leaving, there's a respectful way that you can give transparent feedback. And hopefully, if you followed the course that I've charted so far, this won't come as a surprise. You can say, I talked to you about some of my concerns about the culture and the environment, and I really haven't seen any improvement, and it's starting to impact my mental health, which could impact my physical health, is impacting my psychological safety and my sense of belonging, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's best, that I make this decision. A lot of times we think that we shouldn't be transparent about why we're leaving. But I always think about the people that I'm leaving behind in that culture, right? So give that feedback, because perhaps if you're a great employee and they're really, really sad about losing you, they will put some tangible actions in place so that those that remain there, they won't lose. You never know what that conversation, it may not save you, it may not have helped to keep your job, but you never know going forward how that will impact others that you're leaving behind. I've been the head of HR where, so we've lost high performing employee, and we asked them why, and they told us stuff like this. And it's like, wow. And when you take it to the organizational leaders, they're like, we can't let that happen again. We can't lose all of our high performers. What can we do differently? Sometimes that's what they need to hear, right, in order to make tangible improvement. So again, be that change that you want to see. All right, so that's my breakdown and first episode of Let's Talk About Work, Married to Work. Let me just read some of your comments before we jump over. I'm at 30 minutes, yay, I stayed in my time frame. Again, I hope to see you here every Tuesday night as we talk through an episode. In the meantime, during the week, engage with me on LinkedIn. I post a lot. I love to read your comments and interact with you. You can follow me on other platforms. On Instagram, I'm at The Workplace Doctor. You can follow me on Facebook. We can interact there, different ways to interact. I do lots of speaking around the country, so I hope to come to your city. If I do, let me know you're there. So perhaps we can see each other in real life. Tomorrow, I'm headed to Philadelphia for an event Thursday. If anybody on the call going to be there, I would love to see you there. I'm also, shameless plug, putting on an event here in New York City, April 16th, Impact 2020. And courageous transformation through bold conversations. And during that event, we're going to be talking about how to create that sense of inclusion and belonging in the workplace as we enter the 2020. We need to do some things a little differently. So we're bringing leading diversity and inclusion experts from around the country. We've got people from organizations such as Chase, Wyndham Hotel Resorts, Nike. Oh my goodness, there's so many. I can't even think of them all right now. We've got Patty Perez, who's the author of the Drama-Free Workplace. We've got Minda Harts, who is blazing the country right now with her book, How to Get a Seat at the Table, What Women of Color Need to Know to Get a Seat at the Table. So we've got some great speakers, great events. So you can head over to that website, Impact 2020 conference.nyc, to learn more about that. But we'll talk about that later. But just giving you the different ways that we can connect and continue these conversations. So thank you, Vanessa. Hi, I will see you Thursday in Philly. Hi, Michelle. Thank you for coming. Janet, look at my profile, my LinkedIn profile. I have all the information for the event. It's an open event that you can, I think, just buy a ticket to. I'd love to see you there. It's at the Philadelphia People and Strategy Society. Thank you, Aretha. Thank you, Reginald from Chicago. Thank you, Linda. Thank you all for joining. This is such an overwhelming and amazing turnout for this. Thank you. I see my nephew Everett up in Michigan. Thank you for joining, Everett. So this is amazing turnout. This is just episode 1. I'm glad that I've got the technology going because I was very scared about that, and it will improve hopefully over the weeks. But until then, I hope to see you next Tuesday right here, 7 p.m. and let's talk about work. See you then.